This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Welcome to the latest Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me as always, my guy Adam, the Jock Strozinski. On today's show, we got a big episode. We got to talk about NIL, a high school player from Belleville getting paid, billionaires and their significant others get together, brain trusts with big dollars working for Michigan. How does a Michigan State fan feel? You can probably hear it in his voice. Deflated. But in the second half of the show, rainbows and sunshines as the Detroit Lions today. As you guys get with your family, try and fake it with the people that you know you don't like, are coming over to your house to drink your beer and to act like they know football, but will be your spot to enjoy Thanksgiving. We'll talk about why the Lions are going to kick the Bears' ass, break their losing streak, really because it's crazy to think about the fact that throughout the course of this podcast, 80% of our talks about Thanksgiving have been losses. 7 straight since 2016. That's crazy. But I can kind of see why. We'll talk about that later. Kind of just being in the locker room these last couple years, you kind of get a sense of just how difficult it is to play football on Sunday and then have to turn around and try to pick back up on a Thursday, no less than, and especially at 12:30. But to kick this show off, I guess we got to talk about Bryce Underwood getting the bag. Look, I'm happy for him and his family. I'm coming at this from the perspective of a Michigan State supporter, and I'm just sitting here purely revealing my jealousy. And look, there may be a chance that Bryce Underwood struggles. Adam may say, look, you're giving money to a guy that is young and is inexperienced, and maybe this is going to ruin college football. But at least Michigan and their supporters realize, hey, when a defending national champion goes into the year without really an established quarterback, that's unacceptable. And the Brain Trust gets together, Dave Portnoy, Larry Ellison, Oracle, and his significant other get together and say, hey, this is unacceptable at the highest level. Let's just throw some money at the problem. Well, not only did they throw money at the problem, they went out and got the number one quarterback prospect in the entire country, and reportedly gets around $10 million, $2.5 million per year. And I'm curious, cuz, what's your reaction once you heard the news, how it went down, how everything's shaken out? I know you're not going to be maybe as excited as Michigan fans are who celebrated like they won another natty, but at the same token, can you at least appreciate that Michigan stepped up to the plate in NIL and said, okay, if the big dogs are spending, then at least we got to do the same thing. And it does have a feel of a bunch of big egos throwing some money at an issue. But if you're Michigan Athletics, you should be more than thrilled to take the money.
Yeah, for me, it's really twofold, right? And what you said there is part of it. That's the happy part of it all. It's that the university and the football team in college that I like, that I support, is getting off of their ass and they're putting their money where their mouth is. They are going into this realizing that the college football landscape has changed. If you want to be considered a big dog, you want to play where the big boys play, you want to be competitive with a team like Ohio State, you want to be competitive with a team like LSU, Alabama, Oregon, you want to be competitive with those teams who are year in, year out, vying for a national championship, or in this case, vying for playoff spots to play for a national championship. This is what you have to do. The changing and the restructuring of their NIL deal and their funds makes me happy, because at least now you know that you are going to be on par. You're going to be on a level playing field with the Georgias, with the Alabamas, with the big schools in the SEC, the Texases, and then with the big schools in the Big Ten, the Ohio States, the Oregons. Those programs, you are now going to have a seat at the table with them. So I'm excited about that. All that being said, I do not like going and throwing $10 million at a high school student. giving him cash to come to your university to want to play, right? Like, I understand this is how it has to get done. And the sanctity and what made college sports and made college football so sweet, it's dead. It's gone. And this is a brave new world that I have to wrap my brain around. I get nervous when you are giving large quantities of money to a 16, 17, maybe an 18-year-old. What I would rather see you do is go give a large chunk of change to a guy coming out of the transfer portal. Go get a couple of other guys that you can put around him. If you look at this Michigan team right now, yeah, quarterback is a monster issue for it, right? And you're trying to secure that and take care of that for next year. But there are problems all over the place with this Michigan team. You've got a cornerback who doesn't really want to play. Your secondary is not very good. You've got one guy on the defensive line who can really get home and looks like he's going to be able to play at the next level. So you've got holes there. Your offensive line has been questionable most of the season. You have a linebacker that's playing running back who is your best running back. And look, I think he's great, but could you have done better? Maybe. Like, you look at this roster up and down, there are question marks everywhere, all over it. So does paying $10 million to a high school quarterback to come in and help you win football games, is that the best usage of that money? I don't know. It's going to really see how this all kind of plays out. And here's the thing. We all understand it's not really $10 million. If you're Bryce Underwood, you're hoping to be at the University of Michigan for 3 years and then get to the college level or get to the pro level. You're looking to get out of college and get to the pro level. So when you really break it down, it's like $7.5 million if it's $2.5 million a year, right? So it is what it is. But the whole thing about it is I feel like you could spread that money around, go get better players to help complement him specifically. And I know him coming over, he's going to bring one of his buddies, and the hope is that his buddy brings a buddy, and you kind of get this trickle-down effect where you got guys coming on who all can play together and all want to play together, and it helps elevate your program. But when you really look at the numbers, these dudes who come from high school to the college level, they're usually hitting the transfer portal the next year. So, like, I do not have my hopes set on Bryce Underwood being at the University of Michigan for 3 years. I do not have my hopes pinned to him to help win a national championship. He might be a stopgap. He might be a total bust. You don't know. That's the whole thing about recruiting and the recruitniks. And you go through and you look at all these things online, and sometimes it's just hot air. It's just smoke. And when you really get down to it, man, it's just, you might get a better guy who walks on than the guy who's supposed to be a 5-star who's now making $10 million a year. My hope is it works out. My hope is that Michigan finds some value in doing things this way and is able to put out a really good football program. But I'd be lying to you if I told you I wasn't apprehensive about it. And it makes me nervous when it's a high school student getting all that money because you're still physically developing. You're still trying to learn the game. And I understand this guy might be a savant, right? Like he can decode cover 3, no problem. He's been doing it since he was a kid. I understand it. But you just don't know how it translates when you get to the next level. And that's the thing. And I think you realize this by going to the games as much as you have. And I realize this from covering high school games, then covering college games, and then covering pro games. There is this gigantic level that you have to leap when you go from the high school game to the college game, and then from the college game to the pro game. And when you're making that leap, a lot of guys get lost in that canyonous cavern between the two. And is he going to be a guy who can make that leap and then help elevate a program around him? I just don't know. I hope so. I've seen some of his highlights, man. This guy has a rocket for an arm. He looks like he's incredibly smart. He looks like he can play the game and help take this team to the next level. The hope is, and what remains to be seen is, can he do it when he's on the field? I just don't know. Does it scare you that high school students are basically getting the bag like this? And there's going to be an immense amount of pressure, right? Like Bryce Underwood is going to the University of Michigan next year, and he is going to be the expected starter. And this guy has 0 starts at the college level, and they're expecting him to put wins up. That's a ton of pressure for a high school kid. Does it make you nervous when these young athletes make that transition to that next level and they're lumped with all this pressure and there's this huge price tag at the end of it, and the chance is they fail, they don't succeed? Does that make you nervous?
Yeah, because here's the thing. You still have a talented quarterback on the roster in Jaden Davis, who has not yet seen the field and had his opportunity. So what happens if Davis in spring ball looks better? Do you say to your fan base, well, we got a $2.5 million quarterback?
And look, that's another dude who has a whole year of growing ahead of Bryce Underwood, a whole year in this system, a whole year of understanding what's going on.
Exactly.
So, yeah, for sure. It becomes a huge conflict.
Yeah, because like you said, right now, everybody kind of pencils in Underwood as the quarterback because he's making all that money. Can you afford to? And here's the crazy part is that when you have these people with money, they just want to kind of put it out there and they want to win. But that'll be the question mark is if Underwood doesn't earn the job, how does that sit well with his family, with the people that are paying the bill? Does that automatically come with him? Everybody wants to believe that the people that play on the field is based on merit. But there's going to be some circumstances that get reported where the people that are playing out on the field are playing because of money. And that's kind of murky and something I don't like.
Doc, here's the other thing too, right? So if you're Davis and you're getting $2 million and you're better than Underwood, I mean, like what does that do to that locker room?
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like there has to be some conflict there. Well, I'm starting, you're not, so I should be getting can I get a pay raise? Can I get a bump here? And that becomes, look, I'm going to tell you right now, from my job personally, I do a shit ton of work at my job. And I've got guys who do way less and they get paid way more. And it is a gigantic frustration for me. I've gone to my bosses multiple times and asked for raises, and I've laid stuff out, and I get a small bump here and there, but I do way more work than just about everybody at my job. And I am one of the lower paid employees at my job, and I'm one of the better guys at what I do. So like it would be frustrating if I'm starting for the University of Michigan and I'm making less money than the guy who you just went out and you just backed the Brinks truck up for, you know?
And now we're talking psychology, which is also interesting because there's always been this debate of, when you study billionaires and you study those that grind and have success, typically they come from nothing. And those that typically start with the silver spoon in their mouth, they don't have that motivation. They don't have that kind of grit mentality. Tom Brady probably wouldn't be Tom Brady if he's drafted in the first round. He felt it. Amon-Ra St. Brown felt it, deeply that he was offended that he was a 4th round pick. So we're not tying it to Bryce Underwood. We're talking in general. That my belief is that money should be there for college athletes, but more on an incentive-laden situation. Hey, the more games you win equals more dollars. And to me, what makes college football fun for fans is the camaraderie, is the calling up your buddy and saying, hey, which parking lot are we going to tailgate at, sharing the laughs and the pain of games and sharing all the memories of sharing experiences at the university you went to. And also, too, sharing the memory of great athletes that stay 4 years. So what's happened with NIL in general is that athletes felt that they were being taken advantage of, and that was extreme. That was wrong. College football generates billions of dollars. But then what happens is the solution is also now on the far right side of not being regulated. And I think that there should have been cooler heads that said, hey, we we need to establish some regulations here. Maybe make it so that the transfer portal is not an every year thing where one guy can go to 4 schools in 4 years and end up, really just going to where the dollars are. I think there should be a contract element to it. And it kind of makes sense to me. My thinking would be, okay, every contract signed where money's handed over, you got to commit 2 years to the university. And so that means some players can go to a smaller school, develop, and then they can get their next big contract somewhere else. Or you look at it and you say, hey, you're committed to us for 4 years. You get a 2-year deal if you want to develop and weigh your option, or at the time of your high school, the first decision you got to make is, do you want to commit to 2 years or 4 years? And that's it. Keep it simple where, hey, somebody that wants to commit 2 years maybe feels like they're at a lower school, they can develop. And then if a bigger school comes in, the other argument for Bryce Underwood is the fact that some people have made a real smart argument saying, some of the people that get the transfer portal money, some of the athletes are guys that have the 2-3 year experience that you can go and get from the portal and are more ready made. And I feel like if you're Michigan, I do think that some of this is PR. But in terms of immediacy, you can make the argument that, you know what, maybe there's a quarterback, I'm using a crude example here, being that I'm a Spartan, maybe there's a Tommy Schuster out there who's played at, an obscure school, but kind of had success, but maybe just needs that little bit of more opportunity with a better offensive line, better coaching. You can get him for like $1.5 million, and he's better made, because you look at Oregon, you look at some of the success that people have had lately. Those kind of quarterbacks have been plucked from the portal and are ready-made and have been developed. So there's another argument to be made there, and I just think that eventually you're going to start to see, and it kind of stinks, because you and I have talked about this throughout the course of this podcast. It kind of feels like this country and a lot of things run where they have to see all the collapse around them before they start to make changes. And you're going to have to start to hear, young guys, wasting their money or having severe psychological damage because they've been given too much money too soon. That you're going to have to start hearing some cautionary tales before people go, oh, maybe we shouldn't give a 17-year-old $10.5 million, or maybe we shouldn't make it so that they're a commodity at 17 years old.
Could you imagine what you would do with that kind of money at that age?
Oh, my God.
It'd be nuts.
Luckily, growing up, there was no cell phones because I'll be honest, if there were cell phones around from my ages of 16 to 23, there would be no podcast, there would be no psychology practice, there would be no respect, everybody would look at me like, you did what in high school? You did what during lunchtime? Yeah, we did it. And you did what at college? Yeah, we did it. And if it was all being filmed and then you add millions of dollars to it, you would have seen some videos that you would have been like, this guy is all the ists in the world. Misogynist, this, all the ists in the world would have came out if you would have saw our lifestyle back then. But it was fun. It was college. But yeah, nowadays, and you add money to it and ego and also too, what I don't like, because clearly from us and the sports side, and these guys, I'm still shocked to this day how much athletes look online to see what's written about them. Mm-hmm. Some of these athletes that make $2 million, they're going to get some nasty messages about gambling. They're going to get nasty messages about, hey, you lost to Ohio State, Bryce. You're the some of the nastiest things ever. And despite everybody's efforts to try and prevent that, these guys look like, I'm shocked at how much these guys are aware at the pro level of what's being said about them, to a degree that some of them use it for good to get revenge, but others, man, they take it in a way and they get offended and they chirp back, and it's a huge distraction to be looking online. And I'm of the opinion you block out the noise and act and let the outside world talk all day long. But nowadays, all these athletes have podcasts and brands, and they know everything that's being said about them. It's just legit crazy.
Dude, I moved out of my mom's house when I was 17.
Right.
And I've been living on my own since then. Like, if I was the big man on campus, if I was that guy,
oh my God,
it'd be a nightmare for everybody around me. I was a hellion as it was, and I didn't have any money. I remember saving up beer cans, taking beer cans back to Meijer to sit there and buy a case just so we could have a good time. If I had $10 million promised to me, bro, there'd be no. And I was supposed to be the guy at Michigan, dude. I would flip Ann Arbor upside down. I would turn it upside down and I would ransack it. It would be nuts. It'd be absolutely crazy. And that's the thing that, like, people I don't think really think about with these young kids, right? Like, you are giving a 17, 18-year-old a ton of money, and then you're expecting him to go out and perform on the football field. And there are responsibilities that come along with that I don't think people remember or people take into consideration. It is a weird line for a guy like Bryce Underwood to have to walk, because you are the financial breadwinner for not just yourself, but your family. And then you have to be able to perform on the football field.
Man.
And if you don't, there are ramifications that come with that. And through all of this, you've got to balance that pressure, and you've got to be, I don't want to say an angel, but you need to have some decorum. You can't be showing up hammered at different bars, at different fraternities. You can't carry yourself with with this case of arrogance where you're getting yourself in trouble with ladies on campus and with professors on campus and with campus police. Like, you can't, like, there are things that you have to do. You still have to function as a functional member of society while balancing all of this. And you're 17 years old. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
As you were talking,
You know?
I was thinking it wouldn't be Doc and Jock present to you Detroit Sports Podcast Network. It would have been Doc and Jock present to you Girls Gone Really, 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 Really Wild in Ann
But we
Arbor.
would be doing the show from a strip club.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I mean, still a goal of mine. But, you know, it was what we would be there living it up. You know what I'm saying? And just smoking cigars and drinking whiskey doing this. You know, we already drink the whiskey sometimes while we do the show, but we'd definitely be smoking cigars and we'd have half naked women around us. It'd be a good time.
It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out because there'll be good stories. You saw Blake Corum took money and gave back, and you saw how they can definitely change people's lives. But we're looking at and we're addressing some of the pitfalls. And while there will be some good stories, there will be people that take care of their families and things like that. But also, too, you have to equip people with, hopefully, that comes with it. The component of, hey, financial responsibility. You don't want to hear of an 18-year-old getting into a bad deal where, you know, some shady individual takes his money and gives him for a ride. Because, you know, when kids get $10 million, the next thing that's happened is people are going to get in their DMs and be like, hey, you want to make your $10 million into 40? You know, let's talk.
Yep.
And that's the hook. And, you know, you hear it now with athletes professionally that give money managers their resources. And all of a sudden you hear, well, this guy took $12 million from this guy and this guy did deals. And this guy now owns 45 horses that he bought for $40 million. Now they're worth $400. So you're just like, man, you just hope that everybody understands that in this country, if you take $10 million and you just stick it in the bank, the interest rate you can get on CDs for 1 year at a time, you can live the rest of your life comfortably. Like, legit, all you got to do, guys, it's not that hard. They give you 4.5%, 5% on your money, guaranteed. If you just put your money in the bank and let it sit there, just don't touch it. Just let it ride year after year. You put your first $2.5 million in there for the first year, and you can live off that pretty comfortably if you're wise. But we'll see. We'll see how this shakes out with expectations, with Bryce Underwood and where this is going to shake out. It's going to be a good test case. And at least for Michigan fans, they can say that they're in the ball game in terms of trying to compete at the highest level. And hopefully the Spartans do the same thing because this year kind of, you know, at the highest level to be 6-6 potentially is disappointing. I thought Michigan State could have won a couple more games. And the sad part for the Spartans is they got worse as the year got on. Injuries played a part, talent, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't see, you know, we kind of expected it, but we didn't expect that the team kind of would halt their progress around the time of the Michigan game. So it's disappointing. But for Michigan, they turned their sights to Ohio State, and kind of everybody, being that they're almost a 3-touchdown underdog, kind of has a feel of like, all right, Ohio State's ready for them to take advantage and to roll them. I feel like it's going to be a more competitive game than people think. I think Mullings will allow the game potentially to be slowed down. But I think in the end, Ohio State's going to win by like 10 points. I think 30-20, 40. You know, if it gets up there 35-25, if Michigan can get their run game going. You know, it stinks that Johnson's not going to be there, but that's kind of been the case over the course of time. But, man, Ohio State, when you look at them top to bottom, they got a great offensive line, great defensive line. The quarterback, maybe you can get some opportunities against if you pressure him. But I just think their wide receiver, their star freshman receiver, is going to earn his money, and he'll make some plays late. But I don't think it's going to be the runaway blowout that people think. Based on how important Michigan treats it, I think Sharon Moore understands kind of how to get the team ready. I think they're going to they'll deploy a situation in which maybe they don't ever. This might be the game where Warren does not throw a single pass. It's like, all right, here's our game plan. It's going to be Edwards right, left, center, and it's going to be Mullings right, left, center, and let's go. We'll go by a running attack and bleed the clock as much as possible and keep the ball out of the quarterback's hands. I don't know. Do you have any sort of confidence that Michigan can win this game? Because I don't see it in terms of their ability to win the game. But I'm not feeling a blowout. I feel like Michigan tends to, when everybody says, hey, they're going to get their ass beat, they end up competing at a certain level to make it respectable. I would say, you know, reasonably speaking, you know, unless it's a complete collapse with a lot of mistakes, there's a chance Michigan, you know, taking the points might get you a payday.
It's funny because I was going to ask you if Ohio State hangs 100 on Michigan. So I know where you stand with that. I was doing the math on Saturday afternoon. I was over at my dad's house, and we were watching the Ohio State game together. And I was like, do you think Ohio State hangs 100 on Michigan this coming week? And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, you don't remember that Ryan Day quote from, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, where he basically said he wanted to come out and hang 100 on Michigan, and he never did and hasn't been able to since that comment's come out. And my dad was like, I don't think that's possible. So I sat there and I did the math. Like, you would need 14 to 15 possessions in order to do that. And you know this as well as I know this from covering football. If it's a high-scoring game, you're looking at maybe 9 or 10 possessions. 15 possessions is a lot of possessions. That means you're looking to turn Michigan over about 4 or 5 times in order to do that. So I don't think they'll hang 100, but I think it's going to be pretty damn close. I could see them putting 63 on Michigan. Look, this is not a very good Michigan team. Will Johnson has checked out of the season. Looks like he checked out after week 5. So it is going to take everything that Sharon Moore has in his power to keep this thing kind of on the tracks and get this to whatever bowl game they get lumped into. Here's the thing, though. If Michigan has any chance of winning this game, right, and I'm not as confident as you. You are a much more confident person than I am with this. If Michigan has any hope of winning this game, it is going to be to limit Ohio State's offensive possessions because they have a good run game. They have a pretty good offensive line. It is a little bit banged up, but it's still a pretty good offensive line. They've got very good wide receivers, and they've got a decent quarterback who can get the ball down the field. So you need to limit their offensive possessions. How do you do that? You run the ball. You ground and pound. And it looked like Michigan this past week was kind of working out some of those kinks. It was kind of the dry run for what they were looking to do to Ohio State. It's going to be a lot of ground and pound. It's going to be a lot of running the ball. You're going to take the ball out of your quarterback's hands, and you're going to put it into the hands of a guy like a Cleo Mullins. If Donovan Edwards can have another big game, he seems to play his best football against Ohio State. They could sure use him on Saturday. And then defensively, you're going to have to get to the quarterback. You're going to have to get to the quarterback. You're going to have to force some turnovers. Michigan's secondary is not great. It can be picked apart. But if they can provide enough pressure up front, we see this with what the Detroit Lions do defensively. It gets that internal clock ticking inside the quarterback's head. He starts rushing his progressions. Things don't develop downfield. And next thing you know, you can force a turnover. You can force a 3 and out, and you can get off the field. And that's going to really what it's going to come down to. When you get them stuck in 3rd and long, you've got to get them off the field. You've got to flip the field position, and you got to get that ball back. So Michigan, keys to winning the game: run the ball, and defense has to cause havoc up front and force the quarterback to speed up his clock and get them off the field on 3rd downs. 3rd down efficiency is going to be hugely important in this game for both Michigan and Ohio State. I don't think Michigan has the guns to go up against this Ohio State team. Remember, this is like $100 million football team. Ohio State broke the bank paying for all these guys to come in. I don't think this Ohio State team is one of the best Ohio State teams we've ever seen, but I think it's very good. I think Ryan Day might be the weakest link on this team. Ryan Day, if this game is close at halftime and they're going to him at half and they're asking the question, Ryan, what's going on? What has to change for you guys to break away from Michigan? And he gets that bewildered look. I would expect him to shoot himself in the foot at some point in that second half. We've seen it before. Sharon Moore has beaten Ryan Day. It happened last year when he was coaching that Michigan team. Now, that was a much better Michigan team than what he's got right now. So he does have the formula. He does know the secret sauce to beat Ryan Day. Can he get these guys who are less than what this team was last year to do it against this much better Ohio State team? Remains to be seen. We'll see. I don't think he does. I think Ohio State ends up winning by at least 3 scores. Like I said, I could see them hanging 63 on Michigan and just trying to run it up. You've seen what they did against Indiana last week, where they got the ball all the way down at the 1-yard line, and then they ran 2 fake victory formation plays to score a touchdown because Ryan Day's a dick. So I could see that being a similar case here. But I think Ohio State wins it by at least three touchdowns.
Okay. I like the swagger of their quarterback who pretended like he threw the cigarette on the ground for Coach Sig. That was interesting and kind of exposed Indiana a little bit there. So we'll see how Ohio State treats this and what kind of game this is going to be. Saturday, it's the game that everybody pays attention to. November, Michigan and Ohio State. Now turning our attention to the Detroit Lions, man, things are going great. 9-1. The only thing that people now are very concerned about is the injuries that are piling up, and it's a football team that clearly practices hard and is a group that is working toward a goal of the number 1 seed, win the division, and to reach their own potential. It's a great group to cover. It's fun. You realize that. And again, they didn't play their best game against the Colts, but one thing that you can give credit to the Detroit Lions is Aaron Glenn has taken the unit that he's got, these guys, and they've bought in fully. They're playing great defensively, 10 quarters without giving up a touchdown, and it really speaks to a football team that can win a bunch of different ways. If the offense is not playing well, you can kind of get a sense the defense can pick it up, and when the offense doesn't have a good day, they kind of take and get all butthurt, and they try to take it out on the next opponent. And when you get it, I think you're seeing it now too, Cuz, is that this football team really doesn't really have to worry too much about the opponent. They just say, if we play our game, if we can go out there and limit the opponent from getting into the end zone, if we can make our tackles and do everything fundamentally sound that we know to do, basically, you can now say it. If this group of guys plays Detroit Lions football, smash mouth, limited turnovers, forced turnovers, offense executes well on third down, run the ball well, if Detroit Lions football is played, it's going to be a hard press for another team to beat them over the course of 60 minutes. And it's great to see. I just wish, man, cause this city deserved having Aiden Hutchinson and Alex Anzalone and Marcus Davenport stay healthy and be available, because I think the reality would have been what people are saying. They would have ran away with this. Like, they could have ended up being 16-1. They would have probably made a nice playoff push with Aiden Hutchinson being the Defensive Player of the Year. And when they got to the Super Bowl, they would have had a Dallas Cowboys-like coronation where they would have destroyed the Ravens or the Chiefs. Now it's going to be a little bit more testy, but the injuries are going to come back around in terms of the players that have been hurt, like Alex Anzalone, Khalif Raymond. You realize they'll get healthier and they'll be fresh for the postseason push. But right now, things are looking so great, 10-1. What did you make of that Colts game? Because the defense really was the star of the show. And at the same token, on the offensive side of the football, you got two running backs that can really, really take advantage of playing behind a great offensive line that every week are starting to show out and become superstars right before our eyes.
Yeah, most definitely. And look, I think this game specifically was important. This game was sandwiched between two games where things could have got a little bit wonky in that locker room. And what this team showed you is they have a business mindset. This was a business trip. They went into Indianapolis and they won. The defense shut down the Colts, and offensively, you did enough to get the W. You didn't have to go balls to the wall. You didn't have to unload any of your trick plays. You didn't have to do anything special. It was a very X's and O's type of game. It was a point A to point B. We're here for one thing and one thing alone. It doesn't matter how ugly it gets. It doesn't matter how flashy it gets. It doesn't matter what happens as long as we get the W. And that is something that this team has not had. That is something that I think Dan Campbell specifically has struggled with this team. It's getting this team to not have that letdown game. I brought this up, I think it was 2 weeks ago. There's usually this one game every season where this team just shows up and they don't really show up. It's like the game gets away from them before things ever really get going. Now, maybe the Houston game was going to be that game, but this team came out in the second half after some adjustments and just took that game over. This was a game that had the earmarkings for that. This was a game where they should have rolled into town, they should have annihilated this team, and they should have just kind of went about their merry way. Instead, what happened was they showed up. It was very businesslike. It was boom, 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 boom. Defense shut them down. And I think that's probably the biggest difference with this team, right? I think that might be the most impressive part of this win. It's the defense is so banged up. The defense is so beat up, but they just plug guys in. And they only gave up 6 points last week. The offense found a way to win, and they did just enough. Like, Goff was incredibly average this game. The run game, though, is there to offset Goff's averageness, and they're able to truck the ball into the end zone. And like I said, defensively, you're losing guys left and right. Like, you're on your third and fourth and fifth cornerback right now. Like, you have Vildor out there. Do you know how many text messages I was getting from guys who wanted to hang Vildor? Like, they were so upset and just aghast and appalled that Vildor was in there playing cornerback. They're like, how is this guy even on the team? And it's like, look at what's going on, guys. They are banged up. Like, you're going to have to explain to me what happened to Rakestraw last week going on IR, and we're going to do medicals with the doc here coming up shortly, because you're going to have to get us updated on everybody's condition, because they are so beat up right now. But this team still finds ways to win games. There is no excuse. And you see it in that locker room when Dan Campbell's addressing the team after the game. Just sitting there telling these guys, like, hey, we are a good team. We are an incredibly good team. A lot of you guys were here when we had to shovel the shit and we weren't good and we were getting stuff pushed in regularly. A lot of you guys were here. Some of you guys weren't, but all of you guys are a part of what this is right now. And we are a really good team and we are doing a lot of special things. Let's keep it up. And that is what I think is so important about this team is there's no excuse. It is next guy up. If you're not good as the guy who you're replacing, it's fine. We'll figure out a way. And they're figuring out ways to win. They're putting players, that coaching staff is putting players in positions to be successful. And that is all you can ever ask for from a leader, is put you in a position to be successful. And that is what they're doing. Like I said, Jared Goff, this was a very mundane game for him. This was not that 4-touchdown output that he had a week ago. This was not Jared Goff basically spinning the ball around and lighting the world on fire. This was a game where basically you asked Jared Goff, just drop back and hand the ball off. We're going to let Montgomery and we're going to let Gibbs do all the work for you. We're going to get behind that offensive line and we're just going to bully people. We're just going to run it into the end zone. And that was exactly what they did. They can beat you so many different ways. It's not like it's just one cut to the throat that kills you. This team can sit there and dissect you, and it's 1,000,001 knife wounds in just parts that hamstring you and don't allow you to get up off the ground, and they just slowly murder you and suffocate you. It is awesome to watch. It is so fun to see. And one of those guys who's doing that is Brian Branch. So important to that defense that only gave up 6 points. So important to this team, but I think he's drawn the ire of the league a little bit. He got a flag for his tackle. He was leading with his helmet, bumped a guy as the guy was running up the sideline, pushed him out of bounds. Do you think that the league is now paying a little bit more close attention to this secondary? This secondary is savage. This secondary is on par with that Legion of Boom Seattle defense. This secondary is going out there, and they are picking up the slack. Again, it is one of those defenses where you've got to pick up the slack for other guys. You lose Aiden Hutchinson, right? You just released James Houston. You've got guys nicked up and down that defensive line. So what do you got to do? You got to lean on that on your back seven. You got to lean on your back four specifically, or your back five, because they like to run a lot of nickel and dime. So Brian Branch, a guy that they're really leaning on. Do you think the league is paying a little bit more attention to this secondary, and guys like Brian Branch are going to start to get flagged a little bit more?
Yeah, what stinks is that the Detroit Lions now are on the list too to get focused on with their celebrations and things like that. And when you put out there that you want to be a violent physical team, that's just what's going to happen. But that one was close. I just felt like, he's using his helmet. It's tough. But here's the tough part. Because of the fact that he's been fined repeatedly for the same kind of thing, he risks being suspended for one game. That's not good if it's going to be against the Packers. So we'll see how that plays out. His representatives are working their ass off trying to appeal everything, but he could be suspended. And he's racked up near $100,000 already in his career over 2 years getting fined. But it's that fine line of being physical, tough, violent, and stop using your head. And each fine is going to get progressively higher because he's a repeat offender. Yeah, they're being watched. What's crazy is that the Lions now are at the point where they're like, yeah, we're going to do a dice celebration. And if we get fined, great, we'll embrace it. So it kind of has the feel of like somebody that's an A-plus student but makes a mistake and doesn't do their chores. And you're just like, really? They're an A-plus student. They go to work. They're a good kid. They just refuse to make their bed. And you're just like, man, what are you going to do? They're overall, the Lions are talented. They scored touchdowns, but Jahmyr Gibbs didn't need to do that. He didn't need to just, turn around and flaunt it. Jameson Williams doesn't have to grab his nuts, but when the Lions are 10-1, what's Dan going to say? He's going to, sit him across and be like, hey, you're costing us 15. And they're going to be like, Coach, that was fucking hot, wasn't it? And he's going to be like, yeah, it was pretty fucking sweet. So it's one of those deals where, as long as this football team wins and the antics aren't going to cost them, if he gets suspended, that'll be something different that maybe will force Branch to kind of definitely shake out some of the instincts that he has to lead with his helmet. It's not good for him, but man, because we've asked for this for so long. You remember when we used to ask for some like grunts on the football team? Like, you need some nasty fellas. And Brian Branch is one of those dudes. Like, they revel in it. They love it. They love hitting. Kirby Joseph's the same way. And I think that was jarring when I first got into the locker room, is that they'd say, yeah, what's your defensive motto? Violence, hurting people. And you're just like, whoa. And they said it openly into a microphone. Like, yeah, we know that's kind of what people say behind the scenes, but to say it openly and then to say it repeatedly, where Aaron Glenn will stand in front of the media and just be like, we want to be a violent physical team and we want to hurt you. And then, Kirby Joseph's like, hey, if you guys aren't coming out here to play and to compete, we're going to kick your ass. And it has that feel. And in the end, here's the tough part. Dan Campbell set the tone from the minute he stepped foot in that Zoom meeting, where he's like, look, guys, here's what I need you guys to know. And to the players and to the league, we're going to fucking come for your kneecaps. And good luck. And if you try and kick us, we might go down. But eventually, we're going to come back and bite your other kneecap. And we're going to hurt you. And eventually, come hell or high water, at some point, we're going to be the last people standing. So it comes from Dan Campbell, and it's old school, it's rugged, and in the end, do we care? It's fucking awesome. I think it's finally a football team that we can say, hey, represents Detroit. Let's, beat your ass, smile at you, and beat your ass some more. And eventually, hopefully, this football team can hoist the Lombardi Trophy, because they're getting talked about in legendary status like the Patriots and the Cowboys and the Greatest Show on Turf Rams. The talk this last couple of weeks has been so special to just look at and examine. So you hope that it gets capped off with the Super Bowl, because the stories that you're going to hear about the defense, the redemption of Aaron Glenn, who everybody wanted fired, Jared Goff, Dan Campbell, it's just a collection of guys that everybody felt like was overlooked, and it's a great story. So for Brian Branch, I just hope that he stays healthy, but man, I love the hits and the violence, and I love the swagger. I just hope he doesn't get suspended, because that last one, yeah, maybe you take another fine, maybe you fine him $40,000 and you send the message like, hey, stop it, but I hope he doesn't get suspended. Do you think it's too much? Do you think the celebration, the little bit extra, is a little bit too much for the Lions? It just seems like at this point against the competition, Dan Campbell said when he took out Montgomery, he's like, we got bigger fish to fry. You don't even have to come play. We don't have to even have you out here. Just relax. We need you for later on. So I just feel like, the discipline may come back to bite them, and maybe jot that down now. But when you're playing the Colts and you're playing teams that you think you're better than, it probably doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mind all of the theatrics, right? As long as you're winning games, if you're out there having fun, it's okay. When it gets egregious, I think that's when I'll have a problem. And I don't think they've done anything egregious at this point. I'll be honest, I was annoyed that the flag got thrown at Brian Branch for this hit. I understand it. I understand the rule. I know that he kind of led with his head. And the whole thing, though, as you watch it, like if Branch isn't there to make the play, I think it might have been Pittman, or I don't remember who was on. I think it was number 11. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look at the replay. But he would have kept going up the sideline. Like, Branch just helped push him out of bounds. It wasn't like he lunged with his head. He did lead with his head, but he didn't lunge with his head. So I don't know. I thought it was a weak flag. I think this team, with some of the stuff that they do, specifically this defense, has the eye of the league, and I think the league is going to watch this stuff a little bit closely. I think guys like Jameson Williams doing the nut grab when he was jumping into the end zone, I think those types of things they are going to be what they're going to be, right? I don't think that's necessarily going to be a huge deal, but I think at a certain point, Dan Campbell also has to be smart and realize, hey, you are in a really good spot where you can win the rest of your games for the rest of the season. But your guys are getting so banged up. You've got to start playing smarter, and you're going to have to start to maybe rest some of these guys, because it doesn't help you when you get into week 15, 16, 17, and you're playing with your fourth string guys. Like, that's not going to help you win games. That's not going to help you secure that first overall seed. That's not going to help you secure that number one seed throughout the playoffs. This is the thing. And as much as Nick Wright is a toolbox, right? And I do not like him. I've never found him entertaining. I think he's only kind of gotten his job because he knows people over at Fox Sports. I don't think he's very good. He is correct when he says this Detroit Lions team is basically 1 or 2 weeks away from going from being in the first overall seed down into the fifth seed. Like, you are in the toughest division right now. You can't necessarily afford a loss here or there, because there are other guys, not just within your division, but within the conference, that are nipping at your heels. Like, you are heads and tails above everybody else in the league, but it just takes one trip up, one stumble, and you go from being in first to being in fifth. And you go from having home field advantage throughout the entire playoffs to having no home field advantage in the playoffs. So it becomes this line that you've got to walk. And, as the season is wearing on, it does feel like this team is just getting bludgeoned every single week. It feels like it is a walk to the infirmary. So I want to go around the room, and I want to do medicals with Doc, and I want to get an update on the injury report. We got guys like Montgomery. We've got Khalif Raymond being placed on IR. We got Davis being banged up. Terrion Arnold's banged up. Decker might be out for this upcoming game. Rakestraw was a late addition to the IR, and I have no idea what happened there. It seems like some of the guys I was talking to had no idea that Rakestraw was even put on IR, and I was like, you guys will have to tune in. We'll get the lowdown from the doc as he gives us the medical. So get us caught up on what the injury report looks like right now. I mean, we are what, 11 hours out from these guys playing football on Thanksgiving, and you were finding out guys are still limping to that finish line to get through, to get cleared for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the Wednesday report will come out 4 p.m. where the designations will take place pretty soon, in a couple hours from the reports. But from kind of the situation that you see, I think the players that maybe are the most questionable to suit up will be Carlton Davis and now clearly Khalif Raymond. I think Decker's going to play. It'll be hard pressed. Maybe it's precautionary, but I do think that he'll suit up because he kind of did say that he'd be ready. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown will be ready. So to go up and down the injury report, Carlton Davis is dealing with a knee and clearly the broken thumb. So I think that one's the case where if you have Emmanuel Mosley, I think you probably err on the side of caution with Carlton Davis, especially going up against a Bears team that has good wideouts that can cut and make it a challenge. So if you're not 100%, I think Carlton Davis might be the longest shot to play of the starters. Decker, I think, is going to grind it out and want to play. He's dealing with a knee injury, but he didn't practice on Tuesday. But there is no practice per se. It's a walkthrough. So, a lot of times when you see NP for practice, that's more telling. But this week is all walkthrough. Nobody's really practicing. They're just building up a sweat and getting out there. But he hasn't been out there, so it'll be interesting to see on Wednesday, what that report ends up looking like. Khalif Raymond won't be there. Amon-Ra St. Brown with a knee injury, he'll be there. He's been limited now. He was limited on Tuesday. Montgomery was limited with the shoulder, but he for sure, you've seen him clowning around. Did you see the video where I put it? And credit to Goff. I think one of the things that you recognize when you have a good quarterback, he's quick-witted. So I asked him, when you see the video, David Montgomery, and Jahmyr Gibbs join in on Jared Goff's media session. So they're talking, they're hamming it up. So I just throw out there, so Jared, if it's 4th down and 1, who should get the ball? Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery? And, just to see how he'd answer. And he's like, the best option is probably QB sneak. And went right on to the next question. He said it just like that. So you can tell quick processing speed, knows how to handle a question that could have been spun in a different direction. But it was all fun. And go check it out. Everyone liked it. And I thought it was funny for me to just throw that out there to see how Jared Goff would handle it. And man, Goff's quick-witted. But it's funny. If you go read the transcripts of Jared Goff, the stuff that he tells the media, he can get through a 5-minute session. And each answer is like, 5 words. He's more elaborate with his radio interviews. So I just think that, it's much more elaborate, at least a little bit more real.
Here's the thing. Who would you rather interview? Would you rather interview Stafford and all of his ums?
God.
Or would you rather interview Goff?
It's the same guy. Because it's the same guy. It's the same guy.
No way, dude. No. Goff is way more likable.
He's likable.
That Stafford can go fly a kite and jump off, bro.
Look, in terms of likability, Goff's likable, but he doesn't say anything. It's like I asked him, hey, what are the challenges of the secondary? And his answer was, and I quote, I'm aware of the challenges that their secondary can bring. I'm aware of it. Thanks. Like you could have said, hey, Johnson's a young up and comer. I got to go. You know what I mean? A little bit more. So, that's how he answers. And he goes through it so fast. Just go listen to all of Goff's media sessions with Detroit media when we're talking to him. It's just, it's a fun time. We look forward to it. It's a good challenge and we'll be ready. Are you excited to play on Thanksgiving? Yeah, I love playing on Thanksgiving. It'll be a fun challenge. We've lost the last couple of years, but it'll be fun. And that's how he flies through it. So it's almost unusable. Like it's always like the headlines we use for Goff are about other stuff that people are saying about him and things like that or features because he basically saves it all for other stuff. For us, it's just like, let me get in and out in 5 minutes, 10 seconds and use as less words as possible. But that's how Stafford was too. I don't even think I wrote any Stafford direct headlines of anything that he did. Terry Arnold, I think, and getting back to the injuries, full participant Tuesday groin. DJ Reader had an illness, but he was a full participant. So that's the report. It'll be interesting to see. I think the biggest question mark people will have will be Carlton Davis, maybe end up being doubtful. Probably my best guess is Carlton Davis will either be officially, by the time you hear this, ruled out or doubtful, and everybody else will be pretty much questionable to be able to play. So we'll see how it shakes out with the Detroit Lions. Are you concerned at all about the Bears? It feels like a double-digit 10-point situation. Here's the thing, cuz you remember last year, people say, man, they were sloppy. Remember they had that weird fumble, they came out and they didn't look that good. Well, part of the reason is when you see these guys on a Monday, Tuesday, we don't see the players on Monday. I had a chance to talk to Jack Campbell, and you kind of got a sense of just how tired these guys were one day after a game, and they had to get out there and sweat a little bit for a walkthrough. And you're just like, man, I do think the biggest hurdle against the Bears is going to be mental because these guys are tired and it's a 12 o'clock game. That means you got to get up at like 7, 8 o'clock, get yourself ready, especially playing on a Thursday at 12:30 on the heels of playing a Sunday game, tough physical game on the road. So it's so true. Rest and recovery for these games. And it's kind of stinks too because typically the byproduct would be you'd get the extra couple days. You play next Thursday too against the Packers on Thursday night. So you get the full normal week, but it just kind of sucks that you don't get really the best football on Thursday. But I think this football team can craft a strategy of running and taking advantage of Sam Laporta and some guys that are fresher. Maybe some guys you bring up from the practice squad might end up playing a part in this game with Khalif Raymond not returning. But I just think that for the Lions, if you avoid the mistake, if you can play clean, I feel like this is going to be a grinded out kind of game. And the motivation that they have to end the 7 games might be enough. And the Bears kind of, they remind you kind of the Lions 21 team where they had talent, they get out there and play, and at the end, it just, for whatever reason, they just couldn't close the deal and win games. That's where the Bears are at, and I think the Lions will take advantage. Probably in the neighborhood of like a 23-20 kind of game late where the Lions will either hold on or have to kind of, take that drive. But I just don't feel like the game will be all that, crazy because I think they're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to try and maybe get some deep plays to Jameson and see, take advantage of his youth. But, I would say the key contributors got to be the young cats, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, And Sam Laporta, you got to, on offense, you got to ride the young cats because they're going to be the freshest. And on defense, you just got to hold on because I think it's going to get wild in regards to Allen, potentially taking advantage of Terry Arnold or Emmanuel Mosley. You got veterans, DJ Moore, that can do some things. And Swift, I don't think he's going to have a major impact, but he'll do just enough to make it interesting. So it's going to be a close game, but I think the biggest hurdle is going to be the Lions making sure that they don't have mental breakdowns. Are you concerned at all? Mental mistakes. Are you concerned at all about the Lions and Bears game? Because it has that feel, I can see maybe why they've lost 7 games in a row with that short turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can make the argument that the Bears could win this game. And I think, like you said, the biggest issue for the Lions is going to be themselves. Again, banged up secondary going up against some very good receivers in DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. I think having a mobile quarterback in Caleb Williams will be a bit of a challenge for this defense that is limping into this game. But you go up and down the roster, Lions are the better team. Lions are at home. Lions have the motivation to win this game. They haven't won this game in what'd you say, the last 7 years. So there is that. And this team is playing with house money right now. They understand what they are trying to do, and they understand the importance of this game. Here's the thing. Green Bay, who's on your heels, they're playing later on in that afternoon. So you got to take care of business. I think Detroit wins this game, but I do think it's closer than everybody thinks. And I think right now with the way things are going, I think Vegas has this team as multiple point favorites, right? Like double-digit favorites. I think it's going to be closer than that. I think this is one of those games where Detroit gets out of here. You're happy that they're able to move on. You're happy that they're able to move to next Thursday where they'll be playing Green Bay in Green Bay. They'll win by 7, and we just kind of call it a day. I think having that banged up secondary, right, having these guys limping into this game, I think it allows Caleb Williams to have a little bit of a good game, right? Like I think he's going to have his costly turnover. I think he's going to throw an interception or two, but I think this guy's going to throw 2 touchdowns. I think Swift maybe gets a touchdown. I could see Detroit winning this game 27-21. You've got Jake Bates, who's been phenomenal. I think he kicks 2 50-yard field goals, and that's what helps you win this game. But I don't think this is going to be as easy as everybody thinks it's going to be. This is going to be a tough game. I think the addition of a mobile quarterback, the injuries in the secondary, I think, like you said, that mental drain of just finishing a game on Sunday and then having the quick turnaround of having to do it all again at 12:30 on Thursday, I think it's going to be tough. But I think there's enough motivation with them losing the last couple of games, knowing what they're playing for, knowing that they are the better team and going out there wanting to prove it. It's going to help them get through this game and help them get the win. I think they win, but it's very, very close.
Thankful for you, Cuz, doing this podcast for 11 years. Thankful to all the listeners, supporters of Detroit Sports Podcast at Detroit Podcast. Really enjoy the opportunity to fire up the microphone. It really is. I hope you guys know it's the highlight of my week, doing a million things, but always make sure to know that we make this podcast a priority. No matter what happens, this podcast being on the air 11 years is something that is just crazy. And the more we do it as we approach episode 600, the more prideful it really is to see what this has become and the craziness that this Detroit Sports Podcast has become. And Adam's knowledge, his wisdom, his direct explanations of what he sees are really an asset to this podcast. And it's great to be part of the Detroit sports scene. And hopefully now, with the Lions making their strides forward, that team can bring this football team a championship because it's all archived. So from the time that Adam and I would rant and rave and scream back in 2014 about Jim Caldwell and all the craziness that was going on, to the crazy Matt Millen era, to all the stuff that's going on right now, it's just been crazy and fun, a fun ride. So real fast then, Thanksgiving, everybody enjoy your food, drink up during the Lions game. You can sober up during the Giants-Cowboys because that's going to put everybody to sleep. So get your nap in and then wake up for Dolphins-Packers. That should be interesting, an interesting contest with 2 football teams playing at a high level, and it'll be at Lambeau Field, which doesn't take place too often, so that's going to be crazy to think about. Everybody eat, drink, gain some weight, have some fun. But please remember this, free advice from the doc. If you got that annoying uncle, you got that annoying relative that's coming over and they feel like they want to tell you that Hendon Hooker needs to be starting over Jared Goff, just nod and just be like, okay, man, I hear what you're saying, but I listened to this podcast and it's probably not likely that Hendon Hooker is going to be the starter. Don't let the alcohol cause any feuds. No politics, no religion. Eat, drink, have fun, tell jokes. Don't get offended. Don't take anything personally. And if you got that one person that's the know-it-all, you got that person that just annoys the shit out of you, just smile in their face and talk about them in the group chat. That's the adult way to handle things. Cuz I wish you a blessed Thanksgiving. You know what you mean to me. I know that you're going to have fun with your family. Eat up. Make sure you take care of your health. And it's a special Thanksgiving as it's the first one with the baby. I seen the great pictures at, celebrating Christmas and at Partridge. So very lovely indeed. Cuz I appreciate your time and can't wait. I literally can't wait for next Thursday or whenever we record this next for the latest and greatest episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.